Some intel came out about the Chargers at the NFL Scouting Combine, and it could entirely change how they approach free agency.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Daniel Popper was at the Scouting Combine and had his ear to the ground, and we got to hear about what the other teams around the league think about guys like Zion Johnson and Odafe Oweh, and it seems like they might be a little bit more expensive than we originally thought. And also, Khalil Mack looks like he's going to be back in lightning bolts, and the Chargers look like they're going to be shopping for some running backs and tight ends.
It does feel that way right now, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential payouts with a men's college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. David, Daniel Popper put out a great article about all of the intel that he was able to collect at the NFL Scouting Combine, which is very widely known as one of the bigger kind of water cooler events of the season, where just a ton of chatter goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of teams and reporters and whoever are all able to kind of get a lot of background information or a little bit of inside info because you have so many high-ranking officials all in one place. And I do think that it was great to see Daniel Popper, who's going to be on the show later on this week, and I can't wait to follow up on him, be able to kind of steal some of that intel at the Combine. The bad thing is not all of it was great news for the Chargers, including the price for starting left guard Zion Johnson, who's their former first-round pick. According to Popper, he said that he is viewed as one of the best guards available in this free agency period from talking to people around the league. And although Popper originally had him making around $17 million, his impression from the Combine makes it seem like it's going to be closer to $20 million or maybe even over $20 million, David. We've kind of gone back and forth about what the Chargers should do with Zion Johnson. I was definitely willing to bring him back at the right price, but if it, gets to over $20 million, I think I'm counting myself out.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like that value matches up with what we've seen the last few years with Zion Johnson. I think, with him, it's been a little bit difficult just because around him, whether it was the center play or whether it was injuries around him, it was kind of hard to get a real full gauge on what he was or what he was able to do and look at it objectively from that perspective. But this past year, especially down the stretch, he put his best kind of, football on tape in the midst of one of the worst offensive lines in the National Football League. He's the one that was the best of the bunch. But even considering that, he wasn't really that good. I think, if we're talking about $20+ million per season, that just doesn't match up with the type of play that we saw, regardless of whether we feel like he would fit in this Mike McDaniel offense or not. There is a price, and I think the Chargers have to make sure that they are still looking at being prudent, because to me, there are other options that would be available for less money, whether it, is a short-term deal or not, that would make better sense to me if, they upgrade some pieces around that position as well.
Absolutely, and I think that is the hard part, is it does feel like you'd be a pretty good fit for what the Chargers want to do now, but at the same time, to your point, there were so many years we went into it saying, is this the year that Zion Johnson breaks out? Is this the year that Zion Johnson breaks out? And this year was the closest to that, but overall as a player, you probably got average to slightly above average pay. Just because you did your best doesn't mean that now you should get paid what Quentin Nelson gets paid, because Quentin Nelson gets paid $20 million a year, right? So I don't think that's even comparable. And I know the market is the market, but if that's what other teams kind of pre-draft biases are telling them, or they just feel like they're the ones that can get much more out of Zion Johnson than the Chargers did, that's on them. But I don't know if I want to be the I don't know if I want to be the team though, right? That takes that chance to spend $20 million. You can't pay Zion $20 million to get the play that you got even from him last year, but more importantly, what you've basically gotten on average for his entire career, right? Like he does bring some great things to the table. Like I do think he is a great run blocker. I do think
Yeah.
that being able to say like he hasn't missed a game due to injury for his entire career, like yeah, that's huge. Durability is gigantic. At the same time, like you also have to play well. So even if that means the Chargers have to find 3 new interior offensive linemen, I think it's still better than giving Zion $20 million because I think that really, kind of prohibits you from getting in on some other names you would be able to if you weren't spending that on him, including Tyler Linderbaum. And I think one of the more encouraging parts of this article from Daniel Popper is that he went to the NFL scouting combine, David, and he didn't come away thinking the Chargers are out on Tyler Linderbaum. This is what he said. I believe the Chargers are interested in Ravens center Tyler Linderbaum due to Hortiz's established philosophy. There's no guarantee the Chargers will shop at the top of any market in free agency, but it seems like he's saying if there is one, Tyler Linderbaum would be that guy.
As he should be. This is the type of player that you should be paying top dollar for because he's shown to be a proven commodity, a guy that has been able to get it done at the highest level. He is a 25-year-old center, so he's hitting free agency in the absolute prime of his career after achieving 3 Pro Bowl nods. I mean, we're talking about a guy who still has some ability to grow and get better while also already being so good at this point in time. And I want an established commodity in the middle of the offensive line. You know what you have with your tackles on the outside. You feel really good about that. But I still feel like if you get a really good center, that can be a force multiplier, a guy that can make the guards around him that much better, that much more impactful. So if you have to let Zion Johnson walk in free agency, at least you have somebody in the middle that is good enough to make a huge improvement from that position while also making those guards on each side of him that much more effective as well.
To your point, like I think that if you sign a Tyler Linderbaum, you're not as stressed out about who they get at guard or like that they have to be in at the top of the market for any of the guards that are out there, because I understand, Zion Johnson, they think the price will be way up, but like Daniel Popper has double-digit guards in his top 101 players on his 150 top free agency list. So it's like there are guys out there, and even in the center position now, you had guys over the last few days like Lloyd Cushenberry and Tyler Biadasz who were both released. And now, those are a couple more usable players that are out there in that pool. And it also means there's a couple more teams that need a center, and this is obviously the top guy. But again, like if Popper had basically, if the Chargers were out on Tyler Linderbaum, I think we would have heard about it in this article specifically. But just knowing like what he would bring to the Chargers, because I watched him in pass protection, I'm sold that he's a good pass protector. I'm not worried about that. But what he could bring to them in the run game, I just think would be so kind of revolutionary for this offense with his ability to, be athletic enough to hit the spots and help the creativity of this running game in 2026. So if there is a guy to overspend on, I'd be okay overspending on him, but we'll see how high that price gets, because if I'm going to pay top of the line money, I want to know I'm getting a top of the line player. But another thing he had in this article, David, was that he does expect Mekhi Becton to get released. Nothing he heard of the combine proved differently, and this is not a surprise to anyone.
Absolutely not. This is a done deal. It just all but the paperwork being submitted. This is just one of those moves that makes way too much sense, seemingly for everybody involved. I think last year, you got, this was one of your prized free agent acquisitions, one of the guys you gave the biggest deals to as an external free agent, and he just didn't perform well. He was in and out of the lineup seemingly every single game, dealing with injuries, and when he was on the field and playing, he wasn't playing very well. One of the lowest rated guards in the National Football League. And, he was built for that Greg Roman style of offense where they're in a gap scheme instead of a zone scheme, which is what Mike McDaniel is going to employ now with the Chargers. And that big, brooding, people moving type of guard just doesn't make sense and doesn't fit when they're looking for somebody who's probably a little smaller, a little bit more athletic, and a little bit more agile. So this was always going for divorce, and it seems like everyone around the league knows that as well.
Totally. And again, if somebody else wants to be the one that can revitalize him, revive his career, then let them try to be the ones to do it. He's not a great fit with what they're going to be doing next year. He wasn't good this year, and he was obviously disgruntled, kind of criticizing the coaching staff, how they treated him medically throughout the season. So yeah, it's almost a guarantee that he will be gone. But There's another player that could be gone, and this one is a bummer because it looks like Odafe Oweh is going to cost a lot more than we expected. We're going to get into that and why Khalil Mack should be back and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now, FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. And I will admit it, I am a bandwagoner this type of year. As soon as it gets to March, I am all in on college basketball, and it's great to see as these, conferences end up getting decided and how these teams start ratcheting it up, trying to make it into the tournament, how much fun it is, and mostly how many games you can bet on, because it's just insane. And now you can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Go safe, go bold, ride with the teams you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style now, with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. You will make sure they will be able to see it. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to the Indeed data worldwide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your post the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. David, we have more to get into as far as the intel that Daniel Pompa from The Athletic was able to get from the NFL scouting combine, as all of these big wigs of the NFL are commingling and all of these guys are chatting. And one of the big ones was not only Zion Johnson, having a market that was maybe more robust than we were able to kind of stomach, but Odafe Oweh, and this one hurts a little more because of just how well he played for the Chargers last year after being traded, and just absolutely torrid streak that he went on to end the season. And according to Daniel Popper, with the intel that he got, Popper originally thought that Oweh would cost around $22 million per season, which I would have been all for. But now after his talks at the Combine, he could be set to make $25+ million per season. David, how has this kind of changed your thoughts about bringing back Odafe Oweh?
It's tough because I still really like Odafe Oweh and the type of player that he is, because I like the physical profile that he has, and I feel like it really complements what the Chargers already have with Tuli Pelotu on the other side. With Odafe Oweh, with his length, with his burst, with his speed, with his ability to do a little bit of covering, and just how disruptive he is, and the fact that he's still 27 years old, I think I'm still okay with it, but it's getting a lot harder to stomach because of the youth. That really helps me. I still feel like there's still 3, maybe 4 really good prime years that are left there. If you feel like, you're putting him in a position to continue to use what he does well to get those premium type of results. Like, these are the positions that you want to pay, right? These are the ones that can make you transform what your defense is. And the fact that you have a first-time NFL defensive coordinator, I still love the idea of arming him with the best pass rush that you possibly can to take a little bit of pressure off of the rest of the operation.
I agree. I mean, I think somewhere around there, if it's right around that, maybe I could stomach it. It is hard though, because it is, even with 13 games and even with how well he played, it was an incredibly small sample size, and it was a sample size that came with Jesse Minter as his defensive coordinator. That being said, you also want to give that to someone like Chris O'Leary, who's taking over this job for a guy who is undoubtedly great at his job. So I think that having that third edge rusher is very important for this defense, as we've talked about. I think he is good enough to, replicate some of that production. And I do think that, like, around the league, I think you do have to wonder, though, is if, like, he is scheme proof, because I don't know that he is, because
Yeah.
obviously last season, those first 5 games, he didn't register a sack. Pressure numbers were okay, but he wasn't the same player as the one we saw in Lightning Bolt. So obviously for him, this was his chance to cash in. I can't blame him for that, because he took advantage of it in a short amount of time and made himself a very, very hot commodity. But if it's, just under 25, I mean, the franchise tag is 24. So, like, that seems more appealing now, knowing that this could be his market. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if that changes how the Chargers feel about it, because Joe Hortiz, last time we heard from him, said he was not interested in using the franchise tag. But either way, I think, the Chargers have to keep one of their edge rushers, and that is some good news coming out from the combine, is that Daniel Popper says he does believe Khalil Mack will be back. Said coming out of the combine, my sense is that edge rusher Khalil Mack will return to the Chargers. So I think if you lose Odafe Oweh, first of all, you're probably going to get a really high compensatory pick, depending on how the rest of everything shakes out. But more than that, though, you have a desperation at that position, especially if you don't get Khalil Mack. So as a consolation price to some extent, like, getting Khalil Mack, I think at least raises the floor of that room. So if that's the case, that's very good news.
It really is, for sure. And because to me, Khalil Mack is still a just really complete edge player, just in general, with his ability to be disruptive and dominant in the running game, to set a physical edge with still really imposing power. I mean, he still walks people back and forklifts offensive linemen on a regular basis. Like, that strength is legendary, and it is still very, very real. He did say that he believes in Justin Herbert. He believes in Jim Harbaugh. He likes living in LA. Go figure. Who wouldn't want to live in Southern California? Weather's perfect, lots to do. You're in the media capital of the world. There's a lot around you that would make that make sense. And of course, also made mention of Ben Herbert, and really appreciates what he's been able to do to probably, extend Khalil Mack's career a little bit. And also Daniel Popper mentioned that, Khalil wants that playoff win, and he feels like the Chargers are close to being able to get him that. Obviously, they were in the playoffs back-to-back seasons, just haven't been able to push it further than that first round. So that is great news. Obviously, we'd like to get a little more out of the pass rush with Khalil, but to me, he is a complete edge player and a huge leader for this Chargers defense.
And does, it's cliche, a lot of the stuff that doesn't show up in the box score, right? And getting opportunities for other guys. And we've talked about it, like the pass rushing statistics, the metrics, the efficiency hasn't been as high. He's still been very solid in those regards, right? Like, he's no slouch by any means, and he still brings a legitimate pass rush. But we knew what the kind of ceiling was when it was just Thule and Khalil Mack, and then what happened when Odafe Oweh was there to kind of complement what both those guys do well as more physical players than finesse, athletic chase down players. So the Chargers will need to get a third edge rusher at some point, right? Like, even if you get Khalil Mack back, it's not as big of a need, but it definitely becomes very much in play with the first round pick that you have at pick 22, right? Because right now the other guys are Bud Dupree and Kyle Kennard is the only other guys besides Thule that are on the roster, and, like, I don't think you can rely on either of those guys at this point.
You absolutely can't. And I think when you look at Bud Dupree, he is a potential cut candidate. If the Chargers cut him, they could add another $3.49 million in cap space, and feel like that you could use that money with somebody who could be a little bit more impactful. I mean, he didn't bring a whole lot, and I think when he got the extension from the Chargers, it was a puzzling move. A lot of people were trying to understand that and make that make sense. But I never really saw it. And with Kyle Kennard, he did really nothing. Actually, literally nothing. He had 0 pressures last season, and you barely saw the field. So you'd have to hope for, like, a Justin Aboigbe type, resurgent second year from him. And he's got a lot of work to do to be able to try to make that happen. I think hopefully the Chargers were very clear with the instructions that they sent him home with, and hopefully he's able to attack those tremendously, because at this point, the way I see it, Kyle Kennard's going to have to fight to even make the team next season.
I agree with you. I think there's really no kind of in between. Like, he's either fighting for a roster spot or he improves dramatically, right? And the thing is, it's hard to say he's going to fight for a roster spot because they have nobody there at the moment. and Bud Dupree could end up getting cut. And you're right, I hated that move when it happened. I remember, like, most of the time I'll try to find the upside in a move. I remember that day just being like, what are we doing? Like, what is happening right now? Like, this is just insane.
Why?
But we know how much Jesse Minter's defense shined when they could get into those 3 edge rusher packages. But even more than that, just having the guys to let them rotate in, let them keep enough rest to be good and have the juice when they do go out there to keep playing at a very high level. So if they only bring back one, again, I think, edge rusher at 22 becomes maybe the prohibitive favorite of what the Chargers could do in the first round if that's how it plays out. But we still have more to get into because Daniel Popper also came away from the scouting combine thinking that the Chargers are going to be in the market in free agency for tight ends and running backs. We're getting into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. We live in a world where we can stream anything, order food in minutes, and carry supercomputers in our pockets. And somehow, buying tickets to a live game still feels complicated. Hidden fees, jumping prices, endless steps. There has to be a better way. That's why I use the Game Time app, because it gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets simple. Whether it's NFL games, concerts, comedy, whatever you're into, check out Game Time. I jumped on the app to check out tickets, and honestly, it's so great because they'll even send you notifications of just things and events that are going on around your area. So all of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know this band was playing. And all of a sudden, you're getting an alert for your phone. Or you open up the Game Time app and it has it right to everything that is near you and things that are going on, even if you just want to find some weekend plans. Game Time has all that, including panoramic views from the seat before you buy. All the prices included, all fees, no surprises at checkout. And you can even get zone deals as well. 2 taps and you have great seats locked in, fast, easy, done. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. David, we still have more to get into here as far as the intel that was collected from Daniel Popper at the NFL Scouting Combine with all the conversations that are going on out there. And one of the things I thought was very interesting was the fact that Daniel Popper came out of it and in his article is saying he expects the Chargers to be looking at tight ends and running backs in free agency, which is only surprising due to the fact, David, that when we think about what the Chargers need in tight end or in free agency, those are definitely not the first position groups that are rolling off the tongue. But I do think the tight end one does make a lot of sense, knowing what Mike McDaniel likes for him as tight ends, knowing that someone like a Will Dissly is a cut candidate for this team. It would make a lot of sense for the Chargers to kind of find a great fit for Mike McDaniel's offense at tight end in this free agency class.
Yeah, no, 100% would make a lot of sense for them to try to find a nice complement. I think the Chargers know what they have in Odafe Oweh II, are very excited what he's going to do in this Mike McDaniel offense. I think we're all excited to see what that's going to look like. I think that's going to be a huge, huge storyline for the 2026 offense for the Chargers to watch out for. But they do need to fill out that room. I think you look at it, look what happened in there. And there's a lot of, up and down. I think with Odafe Oweh, you love it. Will Dissly, a healthy scratch a lot of the season. And then, you have Tyler Conklin, who did really nothing, other than play special teams. That was his really only contribution to this football team. Tucker Fisk, a good blocking tight end, a guy that you could easily bring back. But I think, to your point, something you've talked about in the past, which I think is very much is the case, just looking for someone who's more of just a complete all-around tight end that can do a little bit of everything at a competent level. A guy that can go out there and block for you, a guy that can catch some passes and not be just an automatic tell on what the Chargers are trying to do offensively, as in, okay, is this guy just coming in to block and we know he's only a blocker, or can he really be a dual threat that the defense has to really worry about? So I thought that's interesting. And then for a third running back, I think, with Hassan Haskins, he's been mostly a special teams guy, Daniel, and I think they might look for somebody who is a little bit more of a pass catcher, somebody who can actually, play a little bit more on offense than we saw Haskins the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I hope that it's not just a special team specific position. I hope, I think that if it is Kamani and Omarion Hampton, I don't think that it will be necessarily. But I do think, it's something that for, the running back specifically, you should get some more juice there, right? Like you need to get, that is probably, if that's what they're looking at, get some more juice at that position. Now, As far as the tight ends go, and getting back to that, Mike McDaniels loves athletic blocking tight ends, right? So it's not necessarily the Will Dissly who's just a blow guy off the line, a scrimmage guy,
Yeah.
but someone that you can put in motion, you can have go pick off guys at the second level, because that is important, right? Like what Mike McDaniel uses his tight ends for in the running game is having tight ends go and hit guys at the second level that you just can't hit with an offensive lineman for the most part, right? So having those guys out there, having those guys being able to lead the way on screen passes in the quick game with all the amount of tight end screens, wide receiver screens, running back screens that we see from a Mike McDaniel offense, you need somebody like that, and that's not what Oronde Gadsden brings to the table at this point. He has a long way to go. We know what he is. But you want both, right? Like, it's not about Oronde Gadsden being this or that. It's about you need multiple tight ends in this room. So if you're going to have to bring in another one anyways, find one that does the things that he likes. Now, this tight end class is loaded in free agency. Like, there's a ton of names out there. David Njoku, Dallas Goedert, Isaiah Likely, Chiga Okonkwo, Cade Otton's available, Charlie Kolar, Daniel Bellinger. Like, the Chargers have a ton of options. There's a bunch of names in the market this year. So whatever type of guy they're looking for, they could be able to find it in this class. And that was one of the big moves the Chargers did in the first free agency class, under Joe Hortiz, was go and get a Will Dissly, because in Greg Roman's offense, they wanted an end of the line of scrimmage tight end that could own the C gap, as Andy Bischoff put it. But as far as running backs go, you have Amarian Hampton, you have Kamani Vidal, and Jarrett Patterson, who are both exclusive rights free agents. You can have them back. I think it will be Amarian and Vidal. Because I think both of them fit well into what the Chargers are doing now, running in the wide zone. And when you only have 6 draft picks, I have no problem with the Chargers looking for it back in free agency on the lower side of things, right? Where less money at that position can kind of get you more. They could be looking for someone who is more electric, maybe a bit smaller and faster, or they'd be looking for just a pure receiving back, right? Somebody that can be that guy. I'd say that this running back class is not what the tight end class is, but there are guys out there that could fit if that's what they want. I know I brought up Kenneth Gainwell before as potentially one of those guys as a receiving back. But yeah, if a Mike McDaniel sees a weapon that fits, I'm going to be good with it, right? And that's what we heard from Joe Hortiz, is Mike McDaniel as the evaluator and trying to fit the personnel for this offense as the head coach of this offense. But the big question that kind of remains hanging over everything here, David, is just what Joe Hortiz are we going to see, right? And that was, I heard Daniel Popper on Hops with Pop, which is part of his Substack, and he was saying, like, because that's the thing, is people were asking Pop stuff as well, right, to figure out kind of where the Chargers are at on certain things. And he said the main thing that people kind of were wondering around the league is if Joe Hortiz would actually get out there and spend what it takes to be, a top of the market guy.
Are you going to open up that checkbook, Scrooge McDuck? Are you going to actually spend some money? Are you going to go actually try to bring in some top of the market guys? Or are you going to stick with your measured, principled approach? I think that's what we all want to see, because the first year we knew what they had to do. They had to dig out of a hole. They had to make smart moves and try to, get a lot of those buy low candidates, those low risk, high reward type of players. And, in year 2, they had more money to work with. They did not really use it in the way anybody was wanting them to use it. Now, what are they going to do when they have an exorbitant amount of money, like second most cap space in the National Football League type money, as we're talking about right now? And that could go even further with a few extra cuts, which seem very likely to happen. So that's going to be very interesting. Are we going to see Dr. Jekyll, or are we going to see Mr. Hyde come out and spend a little bit of money?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like that, even last year, right, where they weren't super aggressive and didn't go after top of the market type of guys, they still spent all the money, right? And part of that worked out for them because they were able to fit Odafe Oweh's contract in midseason, right, where they had to take on a $10 million cap hit, and the only reason they were able to do that is because of, them saving that space to begin with. So it will be, I think, moving some things around will be part of it, right? Like, and cutting some guys and having those cap casualties, which will give you a little bit of wiggle room there. But yeah, he does have to be more aggressive. Like, there's just, you could be missing your entire interior offensive line. Like, you come away with any less than 2 starters out of this. And in the last 3 years in free agency, he's gotten, I mean, how many above average starters on the offensive line? Like, none on the interior. So, like, yeah, there's a lot that has to be done, and he still is going to have to hit those diamonds in the rough, right? He's still going to have to get the J.K. Dobbins and the Dante Jacksons and the Tierra Tarts and the Puna Fords. I'm not asking him to not do those things, right? But you have to do that and then pick you have to find guys. Like, you have to say, hey, I'm going to pay this guy top of the line money, but I'm still going to be able to recoup a lot of that value. Those guys are out there. Guys hit, on big time free agents every year. You just have to be able to pick the right ones. This is what they need. He has to find one. He has to identify it, and he has to go spend the money it takes to land one of them if the Chargers are going to take a meaningful stride as far as, where this offensive line is, where this team as a whole is, as far as adding good, great players, right, in free agency and just locking up starting jobs that you don't have to worry about going into the draft. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is, later on, we're going to be talking about, did the Chargers players not like Jim Harbaugh? He got one of the lowest grades in the NFLPA report cards that were leaked. So make sure you're back for the bonus show by subscribing and following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from. And we also post a show every day to all of our social media. So you can follow us on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you guys want a little bit more, you can also do that right now with the Locked On Everydayer Club, where you can get every day an ad-free audio version of all of our podcasts, right? And not have to listen to any ads on the audio version, plus get access to the Locked On Chargers exclusive Discord channel. And we have a deal right now. Free agency is here, and so are we. Get 1 month of free Everydayer Club with the code FREEAGENCY, all caps, no spaces, now through March 15th. Go ad-free and keep the conversation going on Discord. But make sure you're back here later for the bonus show about the NFLPA report cards, and tomorrow for Buy or Sell Tuesday. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.